So I've been doing some thinking about my low quality turbo 5.3 motor here. The head gaskets that I reused are the composite or paper style gaskets. They're not multi-layer steel. So I asked a few people around the internet, because if you need the truth, that's where to go. People that have some turbo cars, what do you use for gaskets? Have you ever reused the paper gaskets? And everybody gave me a resounding no. We reuse the steel multi-layer gaskets. So that makes me a little afraid, because I've seen where you can fill up a cylinder with coolant after blowing a head gasket, and then you hydrolock your motor and break a rod. That's expensive and no fun, and it's a fairly dumb thing to lose your engine over. So before it goes in the car, I think I'll make an update. Went on eBay and found some of the cheapest knockoff gaskets for 5.3 HO. It's supposed to be GM part number 12498-544, but what it said on the box when I got it was 12589-226, 2 pieces. I don't know if that's the same thing or not. Also says offshore. So I open these things up. They look a little sketchy to me. I mean, compared to my old gaskets, they look a lot nicer, but all this part that from the picture I assumed would be sealant just seems to be paint. It doesn't have any give to it, so I don't know how well that'll work. There's a couple of spots here. I doubt the camera's even going to pick that up, but it looks like they had a little bit of sand or something underneath it when they pressed it. Anyway, when I was looking at these online, I noticed a lot of them said front, but also on the same side that said front, they had coolant passages, but not in the rear. And on these motors, it seems like everybody blows up cylinder number 7 and 8 in the rear. So I assume that they need a little bit more cooling. There's that. The other thing that made me want MLS gaskets is these are aluminum heads on an iron block. I'm sure they grow at different rates and move around and slip. I'm assuming that, I have no science here. I'm assuming that that's better for that situation to have multi-layer steel gaskets. So I'm going to rip it apart, put it back together with the steel gaskets. I'm going to use the copper coat again, even though they're brand new, because I don't see any kind of seal on the outside layer of the gaskets. Maybe that is a seal, but I don't know. It looks sketchy to me. I'm just going to do it. And then I'd love to throw it in the car, but I believe I've got a lot of wiring to clean up from the stock LT baby motor, the 4.3 V8. I think I need to clean some of that out before I can even get the motor to fit in there. The computer sits up in the front end of the car over there. It's in an odd spot, and harness going over top of the motor. It needs to be cleaned up. Yeah. But anyway, at this point I kind of just want to get things in the car, get it able to move. Even without a trans controller, I should have second gear and reverse. So that would be enough to drive it in and out, get out of the way of the hoist, so I can use the hoist for other things like brakes on my daily. All right, let's take it apart. So on these head gaskets, like anything you buy from eBay, you're your own quality control person, so I'm going to make sure to look through those for any metal filings, rocks, just dirt and debris, and clean them up before I use them. I might be being overly cautious. This is probably who the factory uses, but I don't know. So I've got my wire harness off. One thing in the last video I found out I could have done a little more easily is the idle air controller was moving the wrong way, and apparently in the software for the test modes you can set which direction is home, and so it could have just been as easy as saying out or open is home, and that would have reversed the operation. I didn't try that, so take it for what it's worth. If you're in that situation, maybe you don't need to flip your wires like I did. So anyway, harness is off. I've got the coil pack sitting here on the valve covers in the stock location, stock brackets. I think this one runs into the fan when it's in the engine bay. So I might need to take these off and get a relocation kit of some sort, or make one out of some all thread and spacers and nuts. So that might be a good thing to do anyway, because you can probably move them somewhere where they'll get a little less heat if I do one of these things where you flip the manifolds. I don't want to burn plug wires. I'm going to take off the intake with the injectors. I'm going to take off the coil packs, take off the valve covers and get the rocker trays out, take the exhaust manifolds off, and get the coolant bleed pipes off. Then I think the heads can come off. And I don't have the cordless impact, so I'm going to be using air and see if that works as good as everybody else is doing. Maybe I can put on some motor mounts while I wait for the copper spray to dry later. So one thing I noticed in my initial check of these things is the bolt hole here and the one on the other side. Looks like some of them are stamped so that hole impinges on where it should be pressing against something to seal the water jacket. I might be incorrect there, but we'll see. One good thing about these gaskets is they're wide open at both of the air bleed locations, unlike the paper gaskets that I've got in there now. So I got this Earthquake XL impact gun from Harbor Freight when it was on sale one day. I've been pretty happy with this thing. Obviously it's going to take these out quick, but we'll see what it does on the actual head bolts in a second. And it's nice pulling bolts out this fast. I should get one of the cordless ones. One I can't reach here. Well, that was dumb. I just broke my coolant sensor. Funny, seems like somebody just offered me one the other day. I think I'll check into that. Medium torque settings working good enough for these. Man, this is nice. Got the sniffles. I'm a little sick. So these are those paper composite gaskets. Let's see if I can get one out of here. What can you grip on? Look at all that copper goo left on the block deck. So there's that passage that's missing on these, which again, that's in the back of the engine where you'd think it would matter more. These extra coolant holes are in the back of the gasket like I expect. Some of the China knockoff ones had them up in the front. I don't think that hole is supposed to even be in the gasket. I think that's just a rip. There's a couple of them down here too. One of the things I wanted to do before I sprayed the new gaskets is make sure that the steam holes line up and all the bolt holes line up, because you never know. I was working on probably an early 70s, late 60s MG midget, and there was, I forget if it was an extra hole or a hole missing. I think it was a hole missing for oil drain back from the head. So every once in a while the thing would just leave this huge cloud of smoke behind it as you were driving. So anyway, always check when you're using sketchy parts or driving an MG, honestly. Alright, I know I totally sissied out by not doing the experiment for everybody and trying to run reused paper head gaskets, but I noticed a couple things on closer inspection. That's a piece of gasket that just delaminated off the gasket when I pulled it off. And there's another one, bigger one over here. So that just came off the metal backing. So on its own, that's not terrible, but there's that metal waffle stuff that holds on the composite or paper. So that's not terrible, but before I copper sprayed these, there was lots of those spots in these gaskets, so it's probably a good thing I'm taking them off and replacing them. But if I had to do it again, I'd probably spend a little more money and get something more reputable for the gasket set. I'm not sure how these are going to do, but it's got to be better. Get both sides. Alright, that should be good. I'll hang it to dry. Got a copper colored hand. Alright. Some fairly nasty, tacky stuff. Even the floor is sticky. Could probably use that for traction compound. Alright, I gave these a once over with the razor blade. I didn't get too carried away. If you do everything perfect and clean every time, you'll never know what you can get away with. So then I was cleaning up the heads, everything was fine until I noticed one of my spark plugs wasn't projecting as far as the rest. So I also noticed it was at a funny angle. And that thing is boogered. So the number 7 spark plug was kind of half in and cross-threaded. I'm going to go ahead and blame myself for that. I don't know if I ever took these plugs out, but probably fiddling around at some point. I got a new set of TR6 plugs anyway. These are like the stock old 100,000 mile truck plugs. So I got the next colder heat range. According to the sloppy wiki page, the TR6s are good for medium builds. So I think I'm going to take this plug from number 5 here and just cut a slot down the threads, turning it into a tap, and run it in this way first. Try to run it in from that side and hopefully clean that up. And if it pops out one day, I'll know I'll need a helicoil. So, oops. So, use the zip wheel and the floor vise and cut a little slot down it. So that can cut threads and hopefully clear out. Oh no. Alright, that spark plug hole cleaned up about as good as it's gonna be. I have no idea how long that'll last, but I'm sure it'll work for NA at least. I've done that before on a motorcycle once or twice. Anyway, got the gaskets back on. One thing I need to quit worrying about is this water passage here is open and that one is not open in the block. So I'm not going to get any four corner bleeding anyway. But I do have these facing the rear. Got a little bit of paint run there, don't worry about that. Got the heads cleaned up, I'll drop them on next. Got my KDS engine mounts all painted up nice. I think I went over that in a previous video. They're offset different amounts because the engine mounts on the 2nd gen LT1 and L99 are offset in this cradle. Well, that's great lighting. Might have to cut that. So the driver's side sits back further. I'm sorry, the passenger side sits back further than the driver's side. So I went at this without the instructions, and when I put the one that has a little bit more offset on here, I had it facing toward the rear, interfered with the starter, interfered with the oil dipstick hole. So I looked at the car for a second and thought, oh, I'll just swap sides. So this one is aiming forward. And on the driver's side, this one's aiming forward too, but further forward. So that seems to work. They've got slotted holes so you can slide them back and forth with a hammer. I'm not going to do that now. I think I'll read the instructions and see where you're supposed to tighten it down so that it's just the stock location. Not trying to go for super high performance car here, just want to do good burnouts and click off a 110.5 second pass someday. Alright, heads are on, they're torqued. I went 58 foot-pounds and then 65. That'll probably work, right? Yeah, alright. I think pretty soon it's time to put the engine in.